My first encounter with South Korea was when we arrived in Seoul as I was ambassador. I had visited many other countries in Asia, but not Korea. And so it was a big surprise to me. We had been living for 5 years in the Philippines. I'd been ambassador in the Philippines. And to go from the Philippine cultural environment to the Korean cultural environment was a huge jump. Philippines was very informal, very personal. We knew lots and lots of people, and then we went to Korea and it was much more formal and foreign because we didn't speak Korean, but we spoke English, of course, in the Philippines. So it was a big shock as we drove in from Gimpo and saw all the big signs on the walls and the big cultural differences. It was a big shock. But being a professional diplomat, that was always our challenge. We expected that. Then I think the difficulty for the challenge for us was that not speaking the language. There were all these signs around and you had no idea what they were saying. It was almost a bit like, I suppose, a cultural wall was there. You knew you were in Korea, but you didn't know what was going on. That was always a challenge, but we took to it, and my wife, she went and joined all sorts of organizations, and I tried to do the same. And the more we traveled around Korea, the more we understood Korea as such. And I used to spend most weekends driving. My wife and I would go out in the countryside looking for more temples, and we'd love to go to the temples. And then also I drove to Busan and other places. So we got to know Korea, I think, much better that way. Let me say I probably have a somewhat different view of what culture is to others. When I was at university, I studied, among other subjects, I studied anthropology. And we spent a lot of time on culture and what was called acculturation, that's movement in culture. So I see culture as a very wide definition, not just the arts or books or film, but society. What happens? And so I think with Koreans, what attracted us was several things. One was that it was still very traditional, and there was always the challenge of, wow, that's different. How Confucian that is. I hadn't realized how Confucian society was. We're talking 20 years ago, so how Confucian society was in Korea, even compared with China also. But then I think for me, probably the most striking thing was how quickly Korea was changing. Korea was modernizing. And so in the 4 years we were there, you could almost see it change in front of your eyes. When we first arrived, all the cars were black. People were very careful about any sign of ostentatious living. But by the time we left, there were many more non-black cars, many more foreign cars. Young Koreans were dressing much more colourfully, much different. So we used to enjoy, for example, a walk through Myeongdong to see all the teeny boppers and how they changed and how close they were to, I guess in a way, teeny boppers all around the world, including in Australia. And then you go under the underpass and come out into the markets, into the main markets, and that was definitely not teeny bopper. That was Korea. So I think that changing society was what interests me. It's not that there's a pattern that says that every country is going to go the same way. Korea will do its way differently. But to see that change was really enormous. I think it might sound a little bit glib, but I think to me the fact that Korea was always called the land of the morning calm, which is traditional Korea, which is really we enjoyed much. But when you're there, it's not morning calm. It's been disrupted by construction, building, progress. But morning calm, particularly for us, was Buddhism in Korea, and we really loved going to visit the temples, Bulgoksa and Hyensa and others. And we stayed overnight in Hyensa. But it was calm. With people, and one of the things that I think worried me a little bit about Korea was that they were commercializing the temples by putting drink machines and telephone machines and photograph machines in front of these beautiful, quiet, sacred temples. So with one of the few foreign Buddhist nuns in the country, she was an Australian, Chi Kwan. She was at the Lotus Temple there in Seoul. I spoke several times to the leaders of the Buddhist community, to the venerables, about the possibility that Australia could help the Buddhist community establish itself more constructively with tourism, because still to me the attraction of Korea is that part of Korea, not Itaewon and all the shopping which a lot of other people go for, but to go there. But to have some decent English signage, to have guides, to look after the place. And we tried to get some Australian Buddhists who were experienced in tourism to come up to Korea to work with Korean Buddhists about how you present Buddhism to the community, because I still think that's one of the most important attractions of Korea, that calmness that exists.